So I'm with Steve Evans this morning from Property Dog. Is that right? Is that
Yeah,
how you like to brand
it's
yourself?
it's a tag I like to use. I've yet to negotiate getting the domain, but I will get it one of these days.
Sure. And Johnny doesn't always take the attention. Johnny's your dog. Sometimes you take the attention, and the attention was taken because of a recent deal which you bought at auction, which was broadcast on Homes Under the Hammer.
Yeah, we've done sort of the initial program about the purchase and a program about midway, but we're now at completion. So hopefully it'll be on there again. I get two strikes.
And Steve, the message which you gave me about the property you bought at auction.
Mm.
What was your experience of buying? And it was a commercial turned into a residential property. What was your experience about buying at auction? What would you do differently the next time, and
Yeah.
possibly do the same as well?
To sum it up, I just go in with a plan. Um, just for anyone who's not aware, John that we were talking about, he's my guide dog. To explain things more fully, I'm blind, so actually attending an auction is quite a challenge for me. Um, the property we'll come on to it in a bit, but the experience of going to the auction for me was I'd never bought anything at auction. I'd been to a couple of auctions with friends just to get a feel for them, which I would thoroughly recommend to anybody. Um, but when you're going in, and particularly when you're going in with somebody else, as I had to, it's really good to work out your strategy for the day and for the event before you
So
head
if I
in there.
can stop you there. So
Mm,
uh, for those, particularly on YouTube, they like to think about how
yeah,
to find your strategy on the day.
yeah.
So if we could direct the answer to you're looking at how you finalize that strategy on the day. What would you be looking at, Steve?
Well, what I would do in future when I go into an auction is to. I mean, I knew what I was going to, what my top price was. That's the first thing. You must know what your top price is. Um, but a couple of things that were peculiar to me were that I should know where the auctioneer is in the room. And in fact, when I'm talking about this at your event, Brendan, I can tell you exactly what happened on the day because it was quite funny. Um, but also, we sat at the front of the room, and you should, when you're going to bid for something, you should be in a position in the room where you can see if anybody else is bidding. Um, and I'm sure there was a third thing that I needed to think of. Well, I've said I went in with a specific ceiling, which I was not going to exceed.
So you had a buffer zone which you were prepared to
Yeah,
look at.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd
I,
made an
I,
offer before I purchased, but they didn't accept my offer. Or rather, they wanted it to go to the room, so they didn't want to negotiate.
so you had a strategy also. So there's a how-to strategy at the auction, but there's
Yeah.
also a how-to strategy, i.e., in terms of the property long term.
Mm.
What did you see yourself doing?
Well,
Was it one exit, Steve, or two exits in terms of the property?
there was always the exit of selling, because I knew that the property I was buying, which was 2,000 square feet of commercial unit, which for Crewe is a medium to large commercial property. Uh,
And it was a bank, Steve. That's correct.
it used to be a branch of Lloyds Bank, yeah. And in fact, I'm talking to Lloyds now about my final financing, and the relationship managers gone back and told his managers, and some of them say they remember working there. So that's mind you, there was a lot to do with rubbish that they left behind. But yeah, I mean, my main strategy was that this property lent itself to being converted into a purpose-built HMO rather than just converting what is the rest of the property around this area is Victorian terraces. So what appealed to me when I went to view it was that there were very few internal walls to take down. It was right in the centre of town, which I know is a place that needs regeneration and rejuvenation. And I know that there's sort of locally a lot of call for more residential property to be available. So an HMO was always what I had in mind. But my
Steve, sorry to interrupt. So for the listeners out there who may have not heard of the terminology HMO, it literally means a house of multiple occupation.
Yeah.
Literally means usually more than two people who are not connected together. There's different definitions of HMOs, but it's different to a single let. Some people class it similar to a multi-let. There are slight differentials between a multi-let and a HMO. And you probably can explain the difference better than I can, Steve. What would you?
Sure. The definition is about to change to be more concise because it's varied around the country. The definition, you virtually had it correct when you first said two or more people who are not related. That's how it's going to be defined quite soon, rather than just being guidelines, which is what we've had up until now. But so a house of multiple occupancy is a house where there are more than two people who are not connected, i.e. not related in any way, not married, not in a relationship, living in rooms each. Generally, those rooms are their living space. Sometimes they'll have a communal space somewhere. It depends on the sizes of the rooms, but we won't go into that here.
Sure.
But in my case, what I've created are 7 ensuite single rooms out of this building.
And Steve, the how-to question, again, in terms of the strategy, how do you determine who are going to be your tenants? Is it students or professionals, mixed?
Yeah, and that depends on your area, and you need to know your area. It's no good saying, well, this property I see becoming this type of accommodation. You need to know what type of accommodation you need in the town. And in my case, I've got to be honest, I started off planning to do it with people over 35 who are claiming benefits. That was my strategy, mostly because they're the type of people that get turned away quite regularly. However, I've been swayed because ultimately I'm probably going to do service apartments in this property, but not straight away. I'm going to start off with tenancies. It's interesting, we talk about having a strategy, but I think it's important to have a toolkit for the particular property that you're working with. I know what fits in the town. I mean, we've got Bentley Motors who are making lots of investments in the town and bringing in a lot of people. They bring over a lot of interns from Germany, people doing PhDs, etc. So there's quite a high churn of people coming to Bentley. We've also got a lot of warehousing. So we get a lot of people from Europe and Eastern European countries coming over, and quite often as a stepping stone, and they move on from warehousing to, quite often they come in with skills. And as I say, we also do have unemployed people who are in temporary accommodation. So all of those factors go together to make an HMO quite workable in this sort of town.
So Steve, we've looked at the property. We haven't really looked at the fundamentals in terms of the purchase price. So what was the purchase price? What did it sell for at auction?
45,000.
Wow.
Plus VAT.
Sure. And was there any negotiation on the VAT?
Yeah, I tried to get it unregistered for VAT, which you can do when you're turning a property into a commercial. From a commercial into a residential property. There are guidelines on HMRC that allow you to not have to pay the VAT. Unfortunately, it's entirely up to the vendor as to whether that VAT gets taken or not. And I guess in my case, they'd already planned for that. I mean, the owners, I bought it from a firm of solicitors, so I don't really know who owned the property, originally. But they just wouldn't let me. So I had to pay £9,000 VAT.
Sure. And it does make a difference. Well, it depends on who you are, but £9,000 is quite a sizable chunk of money. And if you can save that, I don't know if it's well known about the VAT aspect about potentially negotiations with whoever's selling it. I had an interview with Ryan Carruthers recently. I don't know if you've heard of Ryan Carruthers. He won HMO Deal of the Year, and he talked about negotiating taking the VAT off that commercial pub because he turned it into a residential HMO. Steve, if there was 3 takeaways from this interview today in terms of your experience of HMOs, what would they be? So let's say there's people listening to our interview right now, they're thinking, what you're saying sounds interesting, turning a commercial building, which has not been used for anything at the moment, into a residential building. And sorry, my mistake, I call it a HMO. It's not, if it's service accommodation, technically it's not a HMO. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Ultimately, what I'll be doing is getting C1 classification for it, which will make it classed as a hotel, so that I can avoid all the issues of 90-day maximum stays and all that sort of thing. So that's where I'm going with it.
So in terms of the 16th of this month, 16th of March is almost this month. We've literally got one day to go. What would your takeaways be, Steve? What are people going to get from your presentation on the 16th of March at the London Bridge Hotel?
Yeah, well, what they'll get is that although some of what I've done is flying by the seat of my pants, it's done with a lot of knowledge and having a lot of options available to me in terms of taking on a property like this. And hopefully some nuggets of good information. One of the big learnings I've taken from this, and in particular watching Martin Roberts' comments about whether I would get planning permission or not. I sat watching that program on my TV at home, and he made me nervous because even though I'd got the planning permission, it's a real challenge to get planning permission to turn a commercial property into a residential. And what I'm going to do the next time I take one on is have a pre-planning meeting with the planners to discuss how likely it would be to get a property through, because I've got my eye on another couple in the town.
Steve, are you talking about pre-apps?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I would go to a pre-app once I've potentially secured a negotiation. Obviously, you can't do that when you're buying at auction, but certainly if you're making a sale direct to vendor, I would get an agreement in place that they wouldn't sell to somebody else in the meantime, and then I would go away and get a pre-app meeting set up so that I've got some idea. It's not guaranteed, but at least you've got some feel for whether you're likely to get permission for what you need to do, which is important.
So Steve, I look forward to seeing you on the 16th of I was going to say June. It's March. Reason why I say
for that one as well.
Yeah. Reason why I say June is because that's one of my focuses going forward for this year. It's my one-day event. It's at the Crown Plaza. I I keep thinking it's at the Crown Plaza Battersea. It's at the Crown Plaza Blackfriars. The reason why I keep thinking it's at the Crown Plaza Battersea is I've got another event at the Crown Plaza Battersea. That's my Wandsworth meet. That's my 7th year anniversary. So that's in April the 18th. So you'll find I have a number of events, the ones which I'm working on. Obviously, the ones in March, because I have no more meets in February. The one thing I would suggest to listeners, if you're listening to this event before the end of February and you're thinking of taking out the annual membership, take it out because it goes up in price. Not a significant, well, £20 it goes up from March onwards, and then it will be going up again and again and again. That's really up to you. Steve, I just want to say huge thanks to yourself.
My pleasure.
So I look forward to seeing some of those pictures of the property.
Yeah, I'll get those across.
Yeah, so I'm going to say huge thanks to our listeners as well. It's interesting we discussed some terminology there like pre-apps and so forth. It's interesting that we're talking about developments as well, because that's one of the ways the market is definitely moving. Some people would say it has been moving like that for quite a few years with permitted development relaxation. I didn't really ask you, Steve. Did you? So you needed planning permission. It wasn't something you could. Yeah. Why was that? Why couldn't it fit under permitted development rules?
Yeah, it depends on the classification of the building when you take it on. The building I took on, because it was a bank, its classification, I never remember the letters and numbers, but
sure, yeah.
was for financial services and professional use. So pretty much anything else I did with it had to get planning permission for. But frankly, the purchase price made it flexible, made it possible for me to take a punt, if you like.
Sure. I want to say huge thanks, Steve, this morning. Huge thanks to my listeners as well. And thanks for the moment. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday, the 16th of March at London Bridge Hotel in the evening. It's a ticketed event. Do book your tickets early because, that's the best way to guarantee your seat. And as I say, that particular evening also has presentation by two prop tech companies focus on the developer market. One's a planning portal called Urban Intelligence. Well, that's how I describe them. They probably describe themselves slightly different. And the other one is Land Insight. So if you're looking to find land. So, Steve, I want to say huge thanks to you this morning and a huge thanks to our listeners as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Brendan.
Thank you.